powerful, more profound. It's more powerful and profound, because through training it can totally, get rid of and destroy all the afflictions from the root. Whereas those spiritual paths, as explained in the lower schools, no matter how much you trained in this spiritual path, it cannot destroy destroy the afflictions temporarily, but cannot totally uproot from the root. So that's the difference. So I make this, I say, yeah, both are. When I was in, monastery, I make this different. Their spiritual path, they are both, spiritual paths seeking the liberation, the quality of liberation, the same. But then both are, spiritual path, but there is, some degree of, strength. The strength much more powerful in the Nagarjuna system. The spiritual path is more powerful, because through training it can totally uproot.
I'm trying to understand the difference in emptiness. In the Prasangika system, when we talk about emptiness itself, we say the self does not exist inside or outside, right?
Who?
The self does not exist. When we try to negate the self, we discuss about the self and not the same entity as the five aggregates. Neither same entity nor not same entity. Right? In this case, I'm just trying to understand what's the subtle differences in here. In terms when we talk about this emptiness.
The subtle difference is,
are there only difference in strength, or are there also in the understanding there are some differences? In the lower schools, when they talk about when they try to talk about emptiness, emptiness of selflessness, right? Selflessness, that selflessness, they posit the selflessness, based on the fundability of the things. Now here, just take a simple example, we don't go much into too many many complications, right? So to put things in a simple, things are appeared, right? In our eye, sensory perceptions, in our sensory perceptions, all our sensory perceptions, things are appeared, right? On eye consciousness, we see the things. When the things appear to you, in what ways things appearing to you? How things appear to you? How things appear to ourselves, right? So therefore, the great master Changyar Rinpoche, sometimes when we talk about emptiness, or when we talk about emptiness, it relates to the negation, the identification of the object of negation. When we talk about the object of the negation, many things that have the impression or the notion that this independent thing that need to be negated. Actually, that is not the master Rinpoche. What he says is what things appear to you appear to as something solid. This the lack of that solidness, the lack of that concreteness, the solidness, the independent appearance. That is what is to be negated. Right. So, things appear to us in a very solid way, in an independent existence. So this is what we need to negate. This is what we need to negate, right? So before we apply to the external things,
First we bring the experience with ourselves, establishing or trying to find the selflessness of ourself, right? Ascertaining the emptiness of ourself. So therefore, we are bringing all our attention inward rather than outside. So this is what we I repeated many times this one, right?
Strong understanding of the differences between the lower schools and Prasangika, Madhyamika, in the ways of interpretation, the emptiness in here. You said that lower school is posit the emptiness or selfless on the unfoundability of things. But in Prasangika, we also talk about the unfoundability of the self in living and the five aggregates with outside the five aggregates. That's the emptiness.
The lower school, they don't talk about the unfindability.
Oh, they don't.
They don't. Lower school, this is the fundamental belief that everything has essence. When we search the things are findable. If things, if things are not findable, things become non-existent. If things become non-existent, we are falling into the extreme of nihilism. So, out of how to say, so many, not only the lower schools, even the mind-only school, Siddhamata school, and even some the great masters like Baba Viveka, the Master Shandira Rashida, Kamalishela, right? So all these great masters, who are all the Madhyamika, right? Sutarantika Madhyamika, and some are Sutarantika Madhyamika. But they do believe that things are final in essence. Finally, ultimately, things are findable. If the things become findable, things become non-existent. If things become non-existent, then they are depreciating. They are they go against the karmic law. They make each and every attempt not to harm, not to affect any karmic law. So this is the fundamental belief. When they try to establish the nature of the things, right? The nature of the things, the validity of the things, they always take the greatest care not to harm the conventional reality. So things, other than consequentialist Madhyamika or Prasangika Madhyamika, all the schools, they do believe in the fundability of the things, whereas it is only the Prasangika Madhyamika school where they do believe in the final essence. Things are in final essence, things cannot be found, but that does not mean things are non-existent. Right. So this I already discussed many times. Things appear to us. What appear to our sense of perception? What appears to our thoughts? Right. What appears, especially to our thoughts. What appears to our thoughts? The external phenomena, the external reality. What appears to our thoughts? What has been appeared to our thoughts? If we try to analyze, this cannot be found. But that does not mean this what appear to us is non-existence. Still, it does exist. If it does exist, in what ways it does exist? That is none other than non-conceptual thought. Because conceptual thoughts believe, that for example, like this table, the base. This table appears to a thought, thought. So what appears to the thought as a table is now the thought itself designated this table on something on what? On the basis of this table, because everything has the basis, right? Everything has basis. So unlike Master Nagarjuna system, Prasangika system, they do not believe in that way. What they do believe is, when you call the table, now there is a difference, right? One is, this table is designated on the basis of the destination, whereas those who believe in the findability of things, they believe this table is foundable from the basis of the destination. So that's the difference.
Very gross.
Yeah, right. So there is huge difference. One is they believe things can found. One they say things cannot be, things when search, both are, if you ask Master Chandragiri or if you ask the lower, some masters of the lower school, if you ask, can this table be can be found if you search, then the lower school masters they say, yeah, this table can be found, if you search, if this becomes, if you search this table, if they becomes, after searching it, if it becomes non-existent, it becomes this. We have to accept this table is no longer exist. Then they believe they are falling into the extreme nihilism. Whereas person can oh, this does not, in final analysis, it cannot be found. But they don't deny that this table no longer exists, just merely because this table cannot be found. But still, it does exist by virtue of designation, mental conceptual thought. Right.
In the lower school, do they believe the self is findable? There is a findable self as well.
Lower school,
Right.
they believe, now lower school, they, that's the self and everything. There's not a single thing that cannot be, they say, unfindable.
If there is a findable self, then how do they? What is the selfless?
If they, if they fear if they, after having searched, if they have to admit, if they have to acknowledge that things cannot be found, then, they really, falling into the nihilism, right. So, I mean, if you ask, the masters of the lower school, they say, I am middle view. No problem, I am middle view. If you say, mind only school, the follower mind school, they also say, I am middle view. Everybody say, I am middle view, Then with a, roaring, the voice, thunderous voice, they say, I am middle view. Right? Everybody say. But then check, right, who is the real the middle view? If it just not through, Buddha say this and Buddha saying, not that way. The great masters, they use the logic and reason, stainless logic and stainless reason. Then we will come to find, we will get into something.
So if I try to understand better, the lower schools, they believe there is findable self. So, and as we mentioned, we discussed that the emptiness or selfless, they posit, is really there is no self that's controlling the five aggregates. In you use the Philosophical way of logics, they don't. They agree there is no self outside the five aggregates that's controlling, but they do not negate there is a self within the five aggregates. Is that correct understanding?
Yeah. When we talk about the self, self is when we talk about the self, there is no independent self.
Right.
Right. So self is, when we talk about the self, it is related with something, five aggregates.
Right.
It is related with the five aggregates. So the self which is related with the five aggregates. But here, in the lower school, the grasping is believing that self to be independent of the five aggregates, not dependent on the five aggregates. So believing there is independent. Now, for example, this mala, right? This mala is empty of. This mala is the empty of independent user. Independent user. Who is the user? I, self. Right. So this is one thing. Another thing is there is a one again grasping, very interesting grasping. We say grasping which is believing this to be permanent, believing this to be unitary, believing this to be independent. This grasping is more the grossest, the most gross grasping. Right. If you go a little, further, then another one, grasping the which believe things to be the independent user. And then if you further go, then mind only school come, Mind only school, what they do say is all those when they posit the selflessness, same, right. Now Prasangika Madhyamika, they do believe, in the self, but then Prasangika Madhyamika, they don't say this is the final selflessness. Prasangika Madhyamika say they are more profound selflessness, more profound emptiness, right. Mind only school, then they say the material things does not exist, even the particles does not exist, right. Particle does not exist. All these are the activation of the seed, they make a very beautiful
Presentation.
beautiful many example, right. So for example, 2 people go, 10 people go, right, 10 people go to the garden, we see one flower, lotus flower, right. Each people, I see one lotus flower, another one see. So each 10 people, we have different kinds of appearance, right. Lotus flower, when we see the lotus flower, we don't get the same feeling. Each of us have different feeling. Why? Mind knowledge school, you say this is the activation of one's own seed. What appears to my what appears as a lotus to me does not appear to the other person. What appears to other person does not appear to me. We are all same different perception, different appearance. This shows we have created our own karma. Each of us, 10 people, have created our own karma. Therefore, we have different appearance, we have different feeling. They make really to some point very profound. The way of saying is not profound, pretty profound. At one point, Master Chandragiri and this Master Chandragiri and Chandragomi, they are they debated for almost 7 years. Master Chandragiri holding the Arjuna Nagarjuna's philosophy, whereas Chandragomi holding the Siddhamati school, Minor school. So they debated for 7 years. At some point, there's many scholars, they are able to follow. But then later on, when the topic becomes more profound, none of them able to follow the scholars. So sometimes Chandragiri has because Chandragiri raised the question. Some of the question, then Chandragomi was not able to answer immediately, not able to offer the answer immediately. So he said, I would bring the next day. But then it went on for a few days, So he was wondering, the answer later on, all the answers given were so wonderful, profound. So he was wondering, somebody must be teaching, right? So this Master Chandragiri went to see what's going on in the house of the Master Chandragomi, and then inside there's one statue, the statue of Avalokiteshvara, right? That statue was teaching. Then then when he went inside the house, Avalokiteshvara vanished. So he asked the Chandragomi, I wanted to meet Avalokiteshvara, Buddha, Avalokiteshvara. So I will. He said, he will try it. He will try it. But then, as requested, Avalokiteshvara granted the permission. So then he said, oh, how come you don't teach me? Then Avalokiteshvara told him, you are someone who is guided by Manjushri, right? Chandragomi is someone, there's nobody guiding him, so I am helping him, like this. So then in that case, continue. Chandragita also requested Avalokiteshvara continue to be my teacher, right? So anyway, but then those who are very strong karmic dispositions, they don't see me, right? So they don't see me, so there is no use, So so in order to create the merit, in order to earn the merit for the ordinary people, I want to show you. So can you please come on my on the head, right? So then there Avalokiteshvara said there is no use doing that. So he insists, and Chandragita insists. Then he anyway Chandragita brought Avalokiteshvara and went to the market. Then people thought crazy. Chandragita gone crazy because nobody is seeing anything, right? Because in order to see, you need to have some karmic disposition to see, good karmic disposition. Otherwise, you won't be able to see, or something like this, So, mind knowledge school, you cannot totally, reject easily. Pretty profound. They use a lot of logic, reason, very subtle, logic and reason. But then, when the reason of the Prasangika Madhyamika, very subtle reason is used, then they run into problem. Mind knowledge school. Otherwise, gross logic won't work in mind knowledge school. Right.
Can I summarize? So the lower school, the two lower schools, they believe they're the definable self, same entity as the five aggregates. So they only negate the self that's a different entity as the five aggregates, which is controlling the five aggregates. That's why they negate. That's their selfless. And then in the mind only school, they also then of course they negate the self that's different than the five aggregates. But within the five aggregates, they believe there is a self same entity as the mind.
Not that way. In the mind knowledge school, in the lower school, like Vabhishika and Soradnika, gross grasping, so there is a gross self. In the mind knowledge school, there is a gross grasping and also the gross self. But what makes the difference? The empty of the selflessness, there are two kinds of selflessness, right? The selflessness of the person and the selflessness of the phenomena. When they talk about the selflessness of the phenomena, then they talk about the material things. Material things are empty of the material things. The things are empty of no. Things do not have any kind of material things does not exist, right? Material things, even if you try to search where is the material things, now we finally come to the particles. We say particles. The particles, even the particles, mind knowledge school refute it. Particle does not exist. They also use a very beautiful logic, right? Like four direction. They use the particle on the four direction. The eastern direction touches the western direction. Something like this. I don't go into detail, right? So even the particles are refuted heavily by using the reason and logic, right? So but then if the these things does not exist, finally we come to know the particles does not exist. But then then we can feel it, right? If you ask them, we can feel it here, we can feel it. Then they do say, this is the activation of your karma. This table and your mind is the same nature, same entity. Same entity. The table does not exist materially outside. Outside from your mind. The mind and the table of the same nature, same entity. Right. So if you believe this, your mind and this table are different entity, then that is what is need to be negated. This is what is need to be negated. So the empty of this table and my mind is the selflessness of the phenomena. Right. So in order to become enlightened, minority school say you need to cultivate the wisdom which understand, which perceive the empty of this table and, for example, like this table and my mind as something separate. The empty.
How do they posit the empty of a person?
The empty of the person the same. What we were saying, like lower school. That's the same, lower school. The same. Right. So then, then finally, everybody, because, much has been talked, because who experienced the suffering, who experienced the happiness, joy and happiness. So who is circling the samsara, who is freeing from the samsara, right? So it's the person. So they talk a lot about the person, the self, right? A lot of discussion, a whole lot of discussion. Even ancient non-Buddhist tradition and the Buddhists, they talk a lot about the person. Even among the Buddhists, they talk a lot about the person, because everything is finally the self, right? So finally they say, oh, 5 aggregates. The 5 aggregates are the person. 5 aggregates are the some person. The lower school they say 5 aggregates. Some they say the mind is the person. And then if you minority school, minority school there are two. One following the reason and one following the the scripture. The scripture say alaya. Mind basis of all. There is one consciousness. Sixth mental consciousness. In the 8 they believe the 8 different consciousness. Right. So the 8 kunshi, right, the mind basis of all is the person, whereas those who following the reason, they say mental consciousness is the person. And then if you further go, in the Madhyamika, again this both Bhava Viveka, the Suradnidika Madhyamika follower, they say mental consciousness is the person. So now highest school of thought, they don't say all these things. What they do say is the self which is designated on the 5 aggregates is the person.
But we also discussed the person quotation. The experience goes to the next life, or experience the karma. All this is the continuity of consciousness, right?
Right. So now what goes, if there is the person, in the lower school there a lot of problem, comes, lot of problem, arises. Whereas Nagarjuna's system or Master Chandragiri's system, consequentialist Prasangika Madhyamika, they don't run into problem, because it is a person who goes to the next life. The person goes to the next life. The self goes to the next life. Where do we come from? We come from the past. Where do we come from the past? Who is the one who is coming from the past? Self, I. Because then, who is going tomorrow? Me, self. Right? Who is going to the beach? Who is going to the market? Me, I. No problem, very, very easy, right? So, all the imprints, positive imprints and negative imprints, are being stored in the person, right? The person, when we talk about the person, we call that is the universal, the self which pervades to all the times, the self pervades to the past, future, and the present. So this self, this self is the, how to say, is the one which store all the imprints. And then when we talk about the mind, when we talk about the self is designated on the what? Continuum of mental consciousness, the continuity of mind. The self is designated in the continuity of the mind. So in the continuity of the mind, all the imprints are stored. Now here, the continuity of the mind is the temporary storage, and the person itself is the final storage, all the imprints, right? So so we read, it overcomes all opposing challenges, right? So now Buddhists, here they try to the method is being employed, the method used, the method that they use is very suited to the reality of the things, the reality of things, right? So the method used is very suited. Now, for example, there is not a single teaching of Buddha which is not meant for the pacification of suffering, the delusion, right? Pacification delusion and bringing to salvation. Can we find any teaching which is not meant for all these three things? We won't find anything, the Buddha's teaching, which won't be able to bring any bring pacification to the suffering, the delusion, and led to the moksha, right? So even the teaching, now take the example, like even the impermanent, Buddha taught the impermanent, right? Because Buddha taught the impermanent for what? Why Buddha taught the impermanent? Because many of the problems also come from believing in the things as having some nature of endurance, believing things are permanent, eternal. So Buddha taught the nature of the things are something impermanent. Then Buddha say, don't grasp. If you grasp, you fall into the problem. Right. So Buddha taught impermanent. So now here, right. So any teaching Buddha taught, is based on dependent origination, based on the teaching, based on the dependent origination. For what purpose? Temporarily destroy the affliction, temporarily destroy the suffering, pacify the suffering, calm the mind, pacify the suffering, finally achieve the lasting peace. So this is the purpose, the Buddha. So Buddha is talking everything at the reality. Buddha is not making things up. Everything he deal with based on the reality. For example, if you try to understand, some of the tantric, in the tantra, even not tantra, even in the when the Buddhist path is being presented, first what is presented? True truth at the fundamental level. At the fundamental level, true truth. You need to understand the nature of the things. Then, once you understand the nature of the things, then then the two, the path come, the wisdom and method come into being. Because wisdom and method are being cultivated based on the reality of the things, based on the actual reality of things, right. So then, because things are in that nature, things are of that nature, then we are able to cultivate either the wisdom and the method, the union of wisdom and method. Then with the cultivation of the wisdom and method, then we get the result. The result is the two bodies, Buddha's body. Then that is the form body and Dharmakaya, truth body. So it's something very beautiful, right. Then the second one is free from contradictions between earlier and later paths. What does that mean? It's free from contradiction between earlier and later paths, right. Now here Buddha taught the four tenets, right. Buddha taught the four schools, four different schools. Buddha taught, although temporary, this Buddha used a skillful method, teaching the four truth, but the ultimate method, the final purpose is to bring to the state of eternal peace, the lasting peace, eternal peace. This is the Buddha's final purpose, right. So Buddha taught four schools, but then all the Buddha's teachings are non-contradictory, right. All the teachings of the Buddha, all the doctrines of the Buddha are non-contradictory. From the perspective of all the Buddha's teaching and the tenets, all the Buddha's teaching and the doctrine as non-contradictory, we say all the four schools are non-contradictory, in a sense that all these four schools can bring to the state of peace, eternal peace, the lasting peace, right. Now here if it says now for example Buddha say, right, Buddha say things are empty of inherent existence, things are selflessness. Why Buddha say these things are selflessness? What reason Buddha use? Buddha would use things are selflessness, things are empty of inherent existence, because things are dependent origination, things are dependent arising, right. So this we know. Now I would ask you, if that is the case, did Buddha taught the things as true existence? Huh? Right now, this thing. Think well. Huh? Buddha also, I say that this we know. Buddha taught, things are empty of inherent existence. This we already know, well, because we have already been discussing all these things, right, earlier. We should have some idea now. But did Buddha taught things as having some kind of essence? Things are the findable, right? Right. So yes. So then, now, if the Buddha say, on the one hand, Buddha say things have no self. On the Buddha said things have the nature of self. So then, now what happened? Now Buddha is making contradictory statement, right? Right. If Buddha is making contradictory statement, then it says is free from contradictions between earlier and later statements. Right. What we are going to say? Right. Because Buddha say, on the one hand, Buddha say for some insider, Vabhishika, Buddha say there is a self. On many occasions, Buddha also said there is no self. He is referring to the intrinsic solid self. Over there, Buddha is referring there is a solid self. So then, does that mean Buddha is making the contradiction statements? The earlier, the statement in which the earlier part and the lower part are contradictory. If you say Buddha, this kind of Buddha makes the contradictory statement, then things are getting worse and worse. Right? Really? Then we cannot prove Buddha is a reliable teacher. But we prove Buddha is a reliable teacher, Why Buddha is a reliable teacher is because what he stated is in reality is it. So, is free from contradictions between earlier statement. Then so what then? Any idea?
I think Buddha taught different things based on the faculty of the listeners, the students.
Listener?
The students at that occasion.
Let's see.
Fit their capability and their faculties.
Let's see. So it is in dependence upon the students, right? Disciples.
Right.
So now, for example, Buddha said, for example, Buddha said there are three vehicles, right? For example, in the mind knowledge school, they accept the three vehicles. In the three vehicles teaching, the presentation is that they don't prove that all the sentient beings are achievable of enlightenment. There are sentient beings who cannot achieve enlightenment, right? But who spoke the three vehicles? It is Buddha who taught us three vehicles. Now, if the Buddha taught this teaching for, as we said, for the disciples, depending on the mentality and the mental disposition of the disciple, Buddha taught the three vehicles, right? That means it is not necessary that all sentient beings can achieve enlightenment. Now, what is the purpose? Taught for the specific disciple, right? Group of disciples. But why Buddha taught? With this teaching, we can say we cannot accept at face value. We cannot accept as it is. If we cannot accept as it is, why? We cannot accept the teaching at face value. Then why cannot we accept? So, that means we need to interpret, right. Now, how we are going to interpret? So, in it, there are three, any teaching we cannot, that cannot be accepted at face value. Many of the teachings that cannot be accepted at face value need to be interpreted, with the three reasons. One is, for example, right now the three vehicles. Why Buddha taught? Finally, it is one vehicle. In reality, is one vehicle. Only one vehicle exists, right? All the sentient beings become enlightened. If make an effort, every sentient being can, each and every sentient beings, because we have the Buddha nature, so we can achieve enlightenment, right? But then Buddha, in the three vehicles, which is also taught by Buddha, what is the purpose? We cannot take this teaching at the face value, because the first reason, the object of intention. What is the object of intention? Teaching such. What is the purpose? Number 3. If you accept this teaching at face value, we would run into problem. With these 3, we interpret the teaching further, right? The intention of the Buddha having taught specific teaching is interpreted, need to be interpreted. Right. Now, for 3 vehicles, what is the purpose? Is the first, the object of intention. Object of intention is, because the object of intention is, Buddha taught these 3 vehicles, his ultimate intention is, in his Buddha's mind, there is only one vehicle. With this, with this intention, Buddha taught 3 vehicles. Right. Now, what is the purpose? The purpose is those who are not matured, right? Those who are not ready. First, it is better to taught 3 vehicles does exist. Then, through slowly, gradually, the persons, the disciples are finally brought to the vehicle of the one vehicle, are brought to one vehicle. But temporarily, 3 vehicles suited to their mental disposition. Right. Then number 3, if we accept as it is, then we go against both the reason and we go against scriptural quotation, scriptural authority, many of the scriptural authority, because it becomes contradictory. We cannot accept the contradictory, both contradictory, right? So, with this we interpret. Similarly, like Buddha say, there is a self. On the other hand, Buddha also say there is no self. So, Buddha taught there is a self. Again, you need 3 reasons: the object of intention, the purpose, and it goes against the reason. Through this teaching is interpreted further. Right. So, this is how we understand. There is not a single contradictory. If Buddha taught such teaching, we need to find Buddha's intention. We need to understand why Buddha taught such a sutra, such a teaching. Right. For example, Buddha say things have true existence, things have true nature, solid nature. Buddha taught this to the mental disposition of the disciple. Mentality, because right from the beginning, Buddha has all the things to say. Right from the beginning, I have all the things to say. Turning everything to that, it brings more harm for the person. So, therefore, as we know, Buddha is very skillful in dealing everything, the reality. Buddha is very skillful in dealing with the reality. So, therefore, first, it is more beneficial for that person. Depending on his or her mental disposition, Buddha taught the same teaching which suited him or her. Then Buddha gradually tried to teach the reality. Right. So, This is number 2. It's free from contradictions between early and later statements, later parts. Now, number 3, it grants fulfillment of being's 2 aims, right? 2 aims. Now, what are the 2 aims? The 2 aims are the higher rebirth and the definite goodness, right? Definite good in the higher in the definite goodness includes the state of enlightenment and also the liberation, the moksha or moksha, right? The total cessation of the state of suffering, the total cessation, the state of the total cessation of delusion and suffering, all the delusions. So, now here how it grants by understanding the dependent origination, the wisdom of dependent origination, it says it grants 2 fulfillments. How? So, now here we need to achieve enlightenment, yes. We need to achieve liberation, yes, right. How we are going to achieve liberation? We are going to achieve liberation, right. We are going to achieve liberation with the help of what? With the help of wisdom, because without wisdom there is no way that one can achieve liberation. In order to achieve the so we need the wisdom. Now, how the wisdom is cultivated? How do we cultivate the wisdom? The wisdom, the wisdom can be cultivated with the help of the concentration, meditative concentration, right. Now, how do we cultivate the meditative concentration? Again, meditative concentration can be achieved by what? By restraining the senses, by training in the ethics, training in ethics. When we talk about training in ethics, then all the restraining from the harmful actions, right. Now, here training in ethics, or what is called restraining the senses. How do we do that? How do we restrain the senses? That is by understanding what things are to be rejected, what things are to be accepted. The teachings which those teachings which talks about need to be accepted and what needs to be rejected. Now, how we are going to do that, right? Oh, I should not do this. Oh, I need to do this. How are we going to do that, right? So, that is only through understanding dependent origination, dependent arising. Finally, the causal dependent origination, the causal dependent arising. Because once you understand the causal dependent arising, then you become very skillful. We become very skillful. We become very skillful in making the difference what is to be accepted and what is to be rejected. Based on that, then what? Then we know how to train in ethics, right? Oh, I should not do this. If I do this, for example, I should not kill, I should not steal, I should not do sexual misconduct. If I do this, I will run into problem. I need to restrain. All this come into being, makes sense. And based on this, how far we are able to restrain our senses, the more greater we are able to bring our mind back at home, right. So, if we are able to bring back our mind at home, the wisdom can be easily now cultivated. So, it is like these three training in this ethics, meditative concentration, and wisdom is like a strong man with a axe, cutting down the tree. So training in ethics is like a strong shoulder. You need a strong shoulder to cut down the tree, right? Is it enough that you only have the strong shoulder to cut down the tree? Not enough, right? You need the then the handle, axe handle. The axe handle should be also very how to say
Strong, sturdy.
axe handle. Should be powerful enough. The axe handle should be powerful enough to cut down the tree, right? If the axe handle is very slim, it break. As you try to cut down the tree, it will break the axe handle. And not only this, you still need another one, the sharp axe. You need the sharp axe. With the sharp axe, you can cut down the tree, right? So with a strong shoulder, very good handle, and with a sharp axe, you are finally able to cut down the tree. Similarly, with the training in ethic, with the training in concentration, meditative concentration, with the training in wisdom, you are finally able to remove. We are finally able to remove all the delusions and all the suffering. So this is what is all talking about, right? It grants fulfillment of being's two aims, right? So with this now, then not only this, once we are able to train in the ethics, right? Once we are able to train in the ethics, we also come to understand that we need to train in other things, right? Now, for example, is it enough to train in the ethics? Right? Why is it not enough to train in ethics? Because we already say, in order to achieve enlightenment, in order to achieve liberation, you cannot achieve liberation in the animal form, right? It's well known. We cannot achieve when we take a birth as a cow, buffalo, all this, dogs, chicken, all the. How can you practice? How are we going to achieve liberation or enlightenment in this animal form? So therefore, you need to have the human form. Is it enough to, in order to achieve the human form, higher rebirth, we need to train in the ethics, because ethics is the main cause for taking the human rebirth, the higher rebirth. Now, for example, is it enough? Is it enough to train in the higher ethics, right? Is it enough? Right. What this is very important. Another one, human form accorded with eight prosperity. So again, this is important. Human being accorded with eight prosperity. Otherwise, just we see some beings really, I mean the human form being, but then there are a lot of problem, a great deal of problem facing, right? So therefore, it is not enough to train in the ethics alone. We need the other perfections, right? Other perfections. Now, why do we need to train in the perfection of giving, for example, right? Why do we need to train in the perfection of giving, practice giving? Sometimes people really make a, how to say, make a lot of hard working, really working hard, but then need to have some resources, right, as per working, depending on the how much one work, need to have some resources. But then on the other hand, some they work little, but then they get abundant. So why? Why all this happen? It has to do with the practice of giving, right? Practice of, when it comes to the practice of giving, one should have good motivation, right? If we do with the good motivation, we get 4 benefits, right? The benefits, it says, first, whether one's motivation is good or not, but still the person receive the material resources, not necessarily this life, but may next life. So this is one benefit. Another benefit is, as one engage in this practice for a long time, one would finally come to meet with the superior beings, who then led you to the right direction, and finally achieve the lasting peace. This is number 2 benefit. Number 3 is, because if you cultivate the wish, that I should benefit others, right? I should benefit others. So the bodhisattvas, they do have the develop the motivation, right? Motivation or intention that I benefit that person temporarily, or the entire sentient beings. Actually, entire sentient beings benefit temporarily, and in the long run, finally, the final goal is to invest them in the state of bliss. The temporary goal is verbally, physically, and mentally trying to benefit. So they have already set up their mind, they have already dedicated. So when they actually engage in the act of giving, the other person, for example, a beggar, when the beggar satisfied, this brought the one who practiced generosity a tremendous amount of joy, right? So this is number 3. Number 4 is, it brings a tremendous amount of merit. This is merit, we talk about, maybe this life or in the next, for men, maybe the merit of achieving enlightenment, right? The merit of achieving. So one get the 4 benefits. So because nobody wants to reborn as a poor, financially or economically, really remain as a poor. Because now take an example. If we were to born in a poor family, very poverty line, very poor family, and even if we want to practice, how can we practice? Our first attempt is just to how to fulfill our stomach, because without taking care of yourself, how can we practice? Right? In a very sick condition, very pitiable sick condition, you cannot practice dharma well. So therefore, in order to even practice very good, nicely, smoothly, first we need to support ourselves, then we are in a better position to support others, right? So that's the thing, that's the main point, that the reason why the practice of giving important. So, guarding the ethics we already discussed, right? Why do we need to practice patience? Sometimes we are impatient a little bit, right? Everybody. Why do we need to practice patience? Because here, to some extent, it's true, because here everything is fast, everything is happening at a very fast, pace. If you work for 1 hour, you get the payment for 1 hour, right? For 1 month, you get the instant payment 1 month, right? So everything happening very, fast. Therefore, we sometimes don't have much patience. Not only the external things, we also internally we also once we also little bit impatient internally, not externally but also internally. But however, external things and internals cannot be compared. They are not same. Now, why do we need to practice patience? The patience is very necessary, right? Very, very necessary. Very necessary. Sometimes things are mess up really because of impatience. Why patient is so necessary? There are a lot of qualities, good qualities over the patient, the practice of patient. A lot of many good qualities about the patience. Patience usually the cause of because everybody want to look attractive. So the patience is the main cause for creating the attractive appearance, attractive look. It also makes some difference really. One time the great master Rejungpa Doji Thapa, the moon-like disciple of the Milarepa, the great master Milarepa. So I think it looked like Rejungpa, very handsome guy, very attractive guy, Rejungpa. Because one time he went to beg, because he was a Milarepa's disciple. He used to go and begging. So one day he came across one householder. So there's outside there's one bucket full of something like water or milk. I don't know. I think he accidentally hit with a bucket full of milk, and the lady come out about to scold, give a warm, very cold scolding. But then when she saw Rejungpa, she didn't scold, because he is very attractive. He could not bear any kind of scolding, when calm down, right? So like there are many other the instances about him. He's a very attractive look like Rejungpa. So it also have some benefit, right? So the practical benefit. So that's why need to to have practice patience if one really because everybody want to look good, look wealthy, not necessarily wealthy, have some resources to support oneself, and then look good like this. I mean, all the qualities we need. We need all the good qualities. If we really need all the good qualities, we need to create the cause for that. Something like this. Yeah. Then joyous effort. Why we need joyous effort? Right? Joyous effort. Sometimes joyous effort is necessary, very necessary. Because we don't train in that. Sometimes then what happens is, first we maybe 1 minute, 1 minute or 2 minutes we try to do meditation, right? Meditation, and then after 5 minutes, then we get tired, easily, right? We get tired easily because we are not trained, because we have no joyous effort, right? And also not only these things, also in the listening, the teaching, something like this, all need to have the joyous effort. On the virtuous things, joyous effort towards what? Joyous effort towards those virtuous, deeds, virtuous things, or virtuous mental state. Also, like once practice should be like water flowing, right? Water flowing. So water flowing, it almost remain like for a long time. So once practice, whatever wants to should be remain like water flowing, need to remain for a long period of time. So for that we also need perseverance, joyous effort. Sometimes what we expect, transformation, internal transformation to take place within a short period of time. Then we work very hard, and then finally nothing happens, and then it's like balloon, right? When all the air in the balloon goes out, something like happening like this, right? So there is no joyous effort, because there is no joyous effort. So joyous effort is also necessary for continue with one's good deeds for a long period of time. And then of course jimpa tsutum sopa tsundu jimpa tsutum sopa tsundu, someday, samadhi, right? Concentration. Samadhi is also necessary, right? Sometimes what really happens is so distracted, so distracted. Our mind gets so distracted, not even finding enough time to rest. Always, sometimes running in the past and sometimes running in the future. All this, lot of things coming in. A great deal of coming things, not knowing how to take rest, right? So always, then what happens is, then too much distracted, one feel tired, one feel boring, too much distracted here and there, then one feel boring. Because what causes the distractions? External things causes the distraction. That means so long as there is external things is there, your life seems active, one's life seems very entertaining, fun. So long as the external things are exhausted, because external things have limitations. External resources have limitations. So long as these limitations are run out, one really feel boring, do not know how to spend the time, right? So something like this, right? So this is sometimes very helpful, when we go to, I think I do this when I go sometime faraway places, usually I don't travel much, but sometimes when I go, I used to go, then in the train, in the aeroplane, I analytical meditation help, just trying to think about this meaning. No problem. Right. So, like this, too much distraction, not good thing, great distraction, because too much a lot of distraction also happen. One is not able to bring the mind back at home. If one's mind is not able to bring back at home, then what happen is, then as we know, the quality of life, one's quality of life is not measured on the external things. The quality of the the mind, the quality of the happy life, joyful life is not measured by external thing. It is purely measured by how one bring a calmness of the mind, right? How one bring the calmness of the mind. So, calmness of the mind is cultivated through inner resources, not through external. Of course, external makes some different, little different, but not total different. But not all, one cannot rely on external things. External things have, as we discussed, have certain limitations, right? Now you see, in some according to some information, in 2022 or I think somewhere in the future year, the world population now 7 billion, now 9 billion come. Now it's a matter of resources running out, right? Something like this. But the future will be is sometimes we may think we will go, right, but their future generation, this will face the problem. It grants fulfillment of being's two aims, right? So, like this. But now, we will not finish. Then final is the wisdom. So, of course, wisdom need to be cultivated. There is no need to say, right? Because we have already taken the birth in the former realm, formless realm. We have enjoyed the most, the most supreme bliss. We have enjoyed the most supreme bliss of the samsara. Limitless time. But then it wouldn't have brought us nothing, to be honest. I mean, we have taken the birth in the peak existence, because the quality of the bliss over there in the peak of the existence is the most supreme, because they have more kind of mental peace, mental joy over there, the most supreme of the samsara. We have already achieved that many lifetimes, many limitless lifetime. For limitless times, we have already taken birth in there and also enjoyed the the blisses, right? And also we are able to suppress some afflictions, the afflictions of the desire realm, but not the root, because we are not able to bring an end to the afflictions from the root. That's why we keep on circling in samsara, right? We keep on circling in samsara. So, therefore, now good human rebirth need to cultivate the wisdom. Even if we not able to cultivate the wisdom, but then take some interest, right? Try to gain some intellectual understanding, some rough intellectual understanding. Then we are not expecting to become enlightened in this lifetime, right? if we are try to do, so that's not good. So then what happens is, as a result of engaging in all this practices, some imprints are being stored in our mind, which then these imprints are then carried out in the next life after life. So this is how we progress, right? So this is how we progress. For this system, my joy increases ever more. For this very unique system, wonderful system, a very flexible system, my joy increases. My joy really increases. Jizongaba say his joy really increases. For that very reason, Jizongaba say he will make this kind of unique tradition, Arya Nagarjuna's tradition, flourish in 10 directions, all the directions, and to flourish until the samsara ends. This is what he Jizongaba aspire. Okay, then today we finish one verse. So next I think we better 41, 42, tendency of sorrow. I plan to read actually 43 up to 43, but it's okay. Yeah, then we have time, right? Also the weather is also hot. Look like need to stop here. Any question? No.